everybody. Welcome to Guided Listening. I'm Jeff Antoniuk from Jazzwire. And today we're going to be listening to some Charlie Parker. We're going to be listening to his song, Segment. And, as I'm thinking about it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if you know of something else, I think this may be Charlie Parker's only minor tune. He didn't write a lot of tunes in minor, of course. A lot of his songs were composed over existing forms like blues and rhythm changes and How High the Moon and things like that. He definitely wrote his own, forms and sets of chord changes, of course. But yeah, a minor tune. So this is called Segment. I think there's only one recording of Segment, and it was recorded again, I think a little while later under the name Diverse, which it's hypothesized maybe the record company got wrong and wrote it down wrong. Doesn't really matter. It's the same song. If you see the song Diverse, it is the same tune, the same melody, same changes as this one, Segment. And so we're going to be listening to Tommy Potter on the bass, and that's a name we saw around this era, late 40s, quite a bit. Al Haig, again, piano. We have Charlie Parker on the saxophone. We have Kenny Dorham on trumpet, and I'm almost certain it's Max Roach on the drums. So, some folks that really continued on into jazz history, Max Roach and Kenny Dorham, of course. So as I said, this is recording in the late 40s. The song is, 3 minutes and 40 seconds long. I mean, it's really short. What's up with that? What's up with that was the recording technology that was in existence that, they were recording for 78s, right? Records that would spin 78 revolutions per minute. You could only fit 3.5, 4 minutes of music on the side. So it was this mechanical limitation. So, it would be amazing to get to hear Charlie Parker take, long choruses. So we get to hear that in other settings, live recordings, things like that. But that's what the deal is with the sound of some of these early recordings and how they're so short and tight. So this one has a quick little intro. I think Bird takes 2 choruses, maybe. Kenny Dorham takes 1. I think Al Haig takes 1, and then it's out, right? They had to keep everything nice and tight time-wise. So this is going to be a good one to listen to. Every time I listen to Charlie Parker, I'm just reminded how even 75 years later, he was still the greatest at what we all try to do. He was inventing this stuff and still the greatest. Just an astounding musician, astounding human being. So before we go on, I mentioned, I think last week for the first time, we're going to be doing a Summer Summit workshop in Napa, California for the first time. So this is going to be our 4th and probably final workshop that we do around North America, different times of the year. So this is going to be March 13 through 15, 2026 in Napa, which is going to be fantastic. It's sort of off season, which means it's not going to be so ridiculously expensive there. It's actually quite affordable at this time of year. The weather's still pretty nice, and you're still in Napa, California. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you may consider joining us this coming March 2026. A third of our spots have already been taken like the 2 days after announcing this because people know it's going to be pretty great. So I hope we'll see you there. So let's jump into this recording. And, of course, we'll always be making some observations. But one thing I want you to listen to with Charlie Parker, of course, that's the amazing note choice and, just his sound, everything that's going on there. But I want you to notice the legato-ness of his playing. So inside Jazzwire and in all the workshops that I do around the country, I hear quite a few, tons, hundreds of adult musicians and, of course, high school and college age musicians. I do that kind of work too. And one of the big things I hear is sort of over-articulating or just weird stray articulations that break the flow of the music. Now, the way I'm talking to you, right there. Now, I use accents, right? Sometimes you don't even hear the last syllable of a word. The word syllable has 3 syllables. Sometimes you're not even hearing the 3rd syllable. So I'm using all sorts of accents and ghosting, yet I'm not talking with weird spaces between, right? When we speak, it's legato. When we speak, it's legato. So there's still all sorts of expression, but keeping it legato. Turns out that's really hard to do on a lot of these instruments. And that's what a lot of people get wrong and that's what we work on inside Jazzwire quite a bit. There can be mechanical issues with, releasing a string or, things that can happen on the fretboard, left hand, right hand. Certainly with wind instruments, the quality of our air and all of that, there's a lot of ways to get this wrong. And I hear it from drummers too, frankly. You wouldn't think that we can control, but yeah, the way drummers play when they're playing more melodically, things connect a little bit more. It's interesting. So let's jump in. Let's listen to Charlie Parker and all of his buddies and listen to Bird's connectedness, the legato-ness that he uses. Here we go. And there's our little intro. And so let's listen to that for a second. So that little sort of, Latin, jungle music sort of, they would refer to it as back in the day, intro, and then it goes into swing, and it never goes back to that feel, but that, right? It's sort of on the drums, and then it goes to swinging on the cymbal. So interesting, weird, but cool intro. Let's check it out again. Here we go. A very angular melody, but legato. Do you notice Bird squeaking some, by the way? A little chirp on his reed there. That's the bridge, last A section. Man, Max is playing so aggressively, like time-wise. He's really playing a lot behind Bird. It's a little hard to hear, maybe. You hear what I mean about Bird's legato presentation? All those eighth notes. And he'll snap phrase ends off. So the phrase endings are short. That's a hallmark of bebop. But everything inside the phrase is super legato. All this great bebop language coming from Charlie Parker. It sounds typical to us now, only because everybody has been copying it for 75 years. Kenny Dorham. Great little solo. So now listen to Tommy Potter and Max behind Al Haig, sort of listening past the solo, and how driving and leaning into the wind this is. And Al Haig's right on top, right leaning forward with them. It's a fast tempo, but they're playing so proactively is the word. And it's a weird, hard to play melody on pretty much all instruments. And again, you hear those little squeaks? Those little squeaks in Bird, in his sound that we didn't hear in the solo. Interesting. And back to the intro. And whatever that was at the end, something got knocked over in the studio, maybe. And whatever that was in the end, maybe something got knocked over in the studio. I'm not sure if that was exactly supposed to be on the recording. So yeah, it did have that bookends arrangement of the four measures up front, and then they went back to that as an ending, and then there was actually a little sort of button on the end. So yeah, so when we listen to this stuff, sometimes it's hard to hear, I wish I heard the drums sort of more distinctly. I wish I could hear the bass a little more clearly. The piano's low in the mix. The sound of Charlie Parker's horn, it's actually recorded quite well, I think, especially given this is 75 years ago again. So, there's plenty that it's tricky to hear or, no, it's not the great studio recordings we hear these days. But there's so much about the music that we can hear and that time feel, just how how pushing it was, but not rushing. It didn't rush at all. The feel wasn't compacted. It was just so on top. Now, these were young men playing this stuff too, right? So, I mean, they had something to prove and, all of that. But when I play with student groups or people come to the Summit workshops, different places around the country, and we could play a tempo like that, we could play this song, but it doesn't feel like that. So what do we do to make our playing feel more like that? Like, what's the lesson to take from this recording? How do we do that? Well, most of us are way too far back on the beat. So I'm just going to say that, and myself included, for sure. And so that's something I'm aware of. It bugs me, and I actually work on it most days of the week. So have it bug you. Maybe you're not aware of it. Maybe I'm telling you now. Maybe have somebody check that out, sort of where your time feel is. It's great when it gets to the point where it bothers you, because that's where we may actually make a change, right? So I hear recordings that's like, really, I'm that far behind the beat? Okay. So yes, pushing ahead like that. The best thing you can do, put on this recording and play over top of it. Pretend you're in the band. Play over top of the piano solo. Play over top of the trumpet solo. I don't mean to transcribe the solo. That's not a bad thing either. But to play with this band, try to move your eighth notes the way Charlie Parker moved his eighth notes. So that's a big one. And that legato thing, it's really, really huge. So one of the hallmarks of bebop is how they would snap off their phrase endings. Bop, doom, doo, boom, doo, dot, bebop. Okay, so that tight ending. So no, that's not legato. When they end a phrase, most often, right? There were times that Charlie Parker would end a phrase on a slightly longer note. That happens too. But how connected everything else is. And most players, whether it's sort of a nervousness or we're not sure what to do, or it's like, I feel like I should be doing more. And so we sort of get into this over-articulating thing. So that is a big lesson that we can take here, even if the recording quality isn't, as perfect as we want. And, as I was listening, like the lines that these guys are playing sound so perfect. And there's nothing that stands out as like, awe-inspiring, like maybe from a more modern player that we hear something like, whoa, I've never heard that before. You got to remember, this is 75 years ago. This was outlandish. This was wild 75 years ago. And it's become so much a part of everyday jazz, whatever that means. And Charlie Parker has, leaked out into other styles of music, Brazilian music, Caribbean, on and on, right? So we've heard these sounds, especially as jazz fans. So they don't stand out to us, but learning some of this language, how perfect it is against the chord changes of a tune like this segment. This is a good one. So we're working on it inside the Red community, inside Jazzwire this week. So we're always working on 3 different songs. So the Red community are sort of the intermediate community. That's where a lot of folks are. And we're working on this song for 3 weeks. So we talk about rhythmic aspects and phrasing like we talked about. We're talking about harmonic aspects. We're talking about how to practice, and we're talking about how to practice legato on all instruments. So I'd really love for you to come check it out. You can take the free trial at any point. There's well over 1,000 lessons inside Jazzwire on hundreds and hundreds of different tunes. Check it out. Poke around. Listen to as many lessons as you want for 30 days, and we'd love to have you as a subscriber. We've got folks from 25 different countries working together all the time and really making progress. So I hope you join us too. So Charlie Parker, if you haven't listened to Charlie Parker in a while, play a couple more tracks, and see if all those observations I made carry on to whatever it is you listen to. I'm going to guarantee they do, because that's the sound of the music. Charlie Parker described for us what modern jazz of the last 75 years should sound like, and it's like that. So, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a great week, and hope to see you inside Jazzwire. Take care.